Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. Last time we discussed and finished setting up Azure Stack HCI on a single node, only one node for now, teaser. And we promised that we would be putting a workload on it, and not just any workload, something cool like AVD for HCI. That's Azure Virtual Desktop for Azure Stack HCI. Not the stuff that you run in the cloud, but something you're running on-prem. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to accomplish that in this video, start to finish, getting you spun up with the public preview of AVD for HCI. And I'm going to admit up front that this tutorial is kind of for newbies. Probably not so much for power users who are experienced doing kind of like massive VDI deployments at scale. There's going to be a lot of UI interaction, direct Azure Portal manipulation, a little bit of PowerShell sprinkled in. But the effort here is to get folks familiar with AVD for HCI, just kind of understanding how it works, how to deploy it 1Z, 2Z. So managing it later at scale will make more sense. So again, a little teaser there. Future episodes will probably talk about scale, but today we're just going to show you how to set it up, get you comfortable, get you familiar, and we're going to hop right into that now in another episode of Real World IT. Okay, so there's going to be two different kind of hard prerequisites that you need. One of them, Azure subscription. No shocker there. It'd be great if you're a global administrator or have some kind of Azure AD rights to be able to manipulate the tenancy or to also like register a service principal and app registration. And then the other thing, and you also need to be an owner on that subscription to be able to register some resources. The other hard requirement is the ability to use like Azure CLI or Azure PowerShell, whether that's in your the host that you're going to be manipulating and running these commands from, or you can do it natively in the Azure Portal, which is what I'm going to be doing here. You can see I have Azure Portal loaded up with my subscription right now. This is an Azure subscription that I have as an MVP, so I have some credit in there that I'm going to be burning through for this demo today. So I've done this deployment a bunch. So if I were to click through my resource groups, you're going to see a couple things in here, my AVD lab, a couple things, but we're going to be doing this from scratch. So we're going to call it something else, obviously. So we know what my subscription is. We're just going to rip through this, all the early, the Azure side, the Azure prerequisites. So I'm going to launch my Azure CLI interface here through the portal. And again, if you have the ability to do this locally, like if you have the Azure commandlets installed, you can run it on your PowerShell window. I'm just doing it here because the first thing we have to do is configure our subscription to even have the a couple resource providers registered to be used. This is by default, you don't have these things enabled on your subscription. You need to tell them to run it. So we need to, I'm already logged in. So I have a couple commandlets here. First, we're going to need our subscription ID, which you can get from the subscription page. And we're going to need to make a resource group too. So let me just go ahead and do that real quick. Again, you can do this to PowerShell or CLI, but I'm just ripping through this real quick. AVD demo. We're going to put it in the East US region. Great. And RG AVD demo. We're going to, I'm already connected here. And I only have one subscription. So what I've done is put the sub IDs in, put the resource group name in, and set my context to the subscription. Again, I only have one subscription. You may have more. You may need to run that step, so I'm just showing it here. The actual registration for the resource provider is simply AZ provider register, the hybrid compute and the guest configuration namespaces. This is going to go instantly for me because I already have them registered. Like I said, I've done this before, and I've already registered them on my subscription. you may need to wait a few moments for those to actually kick in. Cool. So that's done. And now the next step is to get the, well, AVD on HCI lets you, as I've said earlier, lets you use a couple different base OS images. You can use traditional Windows Server 2019, 2022. But the real bread and butter of it is the fact that you can finally run Windows client, like desktop Windows 10 or 11 on-prem in a multi-session environment. So that's, you no longer have to do the one-to-one VM per user because of RDS limitations. With client, you can literally run like one Windows 11 VM and have 30 people logged into it, all active at the same time. All right, so first thing is we have to get all the, we want to get all the available images in traditional Azure Marketplace. So what I'm doing here is saying, give me anything that, oops, yeah, I'll put it back up. Give me anything that's published by Microsoft Windows Desktop with the offer of Windows 11, obviously instead of Windows 10. And there's going to be a bunch of things that come back. And if I were to do something like format table, oops, actually, let's make sure this is convert from format table, get the SKU and get the URN, which is really the whole point of this. Come on. Cool. We're going to get a bunch of offers back. And the only ones we really care about are the ones with AVD in there. This list is short because Windows 11 is fairly new. If you ran this against like the Windows 10 SKU, which here, I'll do that real quick just to show you. Might be a little bigger. Yeah, look, I'm just scrolling through this. It's significantly bigger. So there's 20H1, 20H2, 21H1, 21H2, Redstone 5. It's significantly bigger. So what you can do is in your PowerShell commandlet, you can start chopping this down to say where, I guess, SKU like AVD. Oh, I probably should have converted first. That's not going to work. Where SKU like AVD. There you go. Okay, so the point of this is to get the URN so that we can actually download the image to use, because you're not going to find this image anywhere else. It's not something that you can easily go back and forth with. So we're grabbing it from here. Boom. We're going to put that in my clipboard. You want to get, you can pick whatever version you want, but I don't know why you wouldn't pick the newest one. You have all your security patches and Windows updates down there. So great, got that. I'm going to flip over in here to my resource group. We have that. And I'm going to that URN in a variable called URN. And the next thing, so the next couple steps are me in Azure, in my subscription, I'm going to be getting this managed disk image and granting what's called a SAS token, which allows me through HTTP or through Azure Copy, AZ Copy, to download that managed disk as an actual like tangible VHD file. And then with that file, we can finally like do something with it on-prem with Hyper-V. So you want to call the disk whatever you want to call it. So we're going to call it disk name equals Win11 AVD multisesh. Sure. And we're going to run AZ disk create resource group, which we already have. The name of this disk is going to be the variable I just created. Image reference is going to be the URN. That's the URN. Hit enter. It's doing the magic in the back end. Cool. I mean, there's a URI here identifying it with its unique ID. We don't really need any of that. What we do need to do, though, is now create a downloadable link. So that's, I'm putting this all in a variable here, but I'm basically saying, hey, Azure, the disk that I just made, grant me access to it for, I don't know, 10 hours, read only. And I'm obviously specifying the disk and the resource group that it exists in. The SAS token is going to come back. And it's done. And now what we want to do is, if I were to, I'll just show you. If I were to look at that, you're going to see that there is a long URL here. So you can copy and paste that if you want. Directly from the output, I was just going to run this command, which kind of scrapes it from the JSON for me. And again, depending on, like, I'm running this from the Azure Portal Cloud Shell, so I already have a browser open. If you were doing this through traditional Azure CLI, or if you were maybe using the Azure PowerShell commandlets, you could automate this whole process where now you have this URL, you can scrape it out, and you can run like start bits transfer, or you can curl it, whatever you want. But the long and short of it is, we're going to paste that in here, and we're going to download it, and you're going to see it is a 127 gigabyte file. And my internet connection ain't that fast. So 9 hours, we're not going to wait that long. We're just going to hand wave, and it's going to be done. So I'm going to jump for a little bit here. And actually, I think, there we go. I've already downloaded it. I downloaded it a couple months ago, actually, because I've been testing this. So I mentioned 127 gigs. Why is my file here only 12 gigs, 11 and change? VHDXs or VHDs even in Azure for managed disks, they have to be thick provisioned. So you can't have in Azure, like if you were to upload your own image to the marketplace, it cannot be a dynamically expanding disk. It can't be a thin VHDX. So those images that are in Azure, when you download them, are going to be thick, fully provisioned. There's going to be a lot of zeros. It's really like the data inside that VHDX is actually going to be very, very small. It's only going to take up, as you can see, maybe 10%. So what you can do is, once you download that file through PowerShell or through Hyper-V, if you want to shrink it, you can do just a convert VHD on it. You can do it through the Hyper-V manager, whatever you want. Doesn't really matter, which is what I did here. I converted it from not only a VHD to a VHDX, but I also converted it to a dynamically expanding disk, because I don't want a 127 gig file that's not doing anything, taking up all the space on my drive. You don't need to do it. You can if you want. I think the PowerShell to run it is literally just like convert dash VHD, and then you just specify VHD type as dynamic, and there you go. All of this is going to be, I actually have a blog post on it for almost a year now. All the steps are in there if you're not following along with the commands. So we got our file. Let me cancel this download so my wife doesn't yell at me for killing all the bandwidth. And if I actually, just to show you, if I were to look at my resource group in Azure and hit refresh, there's that managed disk that we had created earlier. So we don't need that anymore at this point. You can keep it there if you plan on downloading it. Let's clean that up, actually. To do that, we need to revoke the SAS token that we generated for 10 hours, because, again, through the magic of video editing, it's already done. Once that's done, we can just run AZDisk delete, I think, or we can just put the check in here and hit the delete button, which is what I'm going to do because it's already up. Disk access revocation is done. We're going to hit delete. Yes. Okay. So at this point, you have your VHDX for your VM. If you're familiar with creating VMs in Hyper-V or Failover Cluster Manager or System Center or PowerShell, you would be making a VM just like how you would create any other VM. You're gonna make a blank VM, and instead of you using a blank VHDX, you're gonna copy and paste this thing in, or you can upload it to your System Center library. We'll go through those steps later. That's a fairly trivial process. What I want to focus on now is the actual the actual creation of AVD stuff, like the things you're here for. So first thing we need to do, and again, there are ways to automate this. We're going to do it through PowerShell though. We're going to do it through the portal. There are ways to do it through PowerShell. We're going to show you how it looks in the GUI though. So we need to onboard the VM through Azure Arc, which generates a PowerShell script that we're going to copy and paste somewhere. And you can see I already have a couple things loaded up in here, some Azure Arc registered servers. So let's just go ahead. We're going to add a single server. Next, we're going to put it in the resource group I just made. We're going to put it in the East US region because that's where I am. Public endpoint. Yep, that's all good. We don't have to really worry about tagging anything. This is what we need. And this script generally, like you could generate it once and just change the variables in here if you know them. So let me put this in Notepad. So as you can see, I just took everything they sent me, and look, all it's doing is it's taking the subscription, it's taking the resource group, my Azure AD tenancy, and it's going to ultimately run a command to download an agent, run the agent inside my VM, which is going to register my VM that I eventually will create in Azure as an Azure Arc server. So we're going to save that for a few minutes. And we now need to go and create our AVD host pool. So again, you want to search for Azure Virtual Desktop. And it's the same UI that you would use if you were making a host pool in traditional AVD in the cloud. So we're going to call this host pool demo. We're going to keep all of this, the default settings. And the only thing you really need to change is the host pool type, because you need to pick one or the other. If you're not familiar, the difference between personal and pooled comes down to that multi-session versus one-to-one assignment of a VM. So a personal host pool literally means that each person, as they RDP in and establish their session through Microsoft's infrastructure, they're going to get assigned their own personal VM, which is good maybe if you have maybe resource constraints or you need dedicated hardware or you worry about security or whatever. We're not going to be doing that here. The other type is a pooled host type, which is, hey, I have 4 VMs that are all running multi-session. They're all available to all users that log in, and they're going to be, the user is going to be assigned to one of them based on some kind of rule, which it can change. The host that they're assigned can change based on what that current status is. Maybe there's 20 people logged into host 1 and 5 logged into host 2. Well, they're going to obviously probably want to go to the one with less people logged in. So we're going to pick that. We're going to pick a pooled type. And that load balancing algorithm that comes up now is what I just described. Breadth first versus depth first. Again, the concept is user assignment based on utilization. Breadth first is what I personally would use, which is a kind of even distribution across all the hosts in the pool. So if you have, again, 5 hosts VMs in your pool, and let's say you had 100 users, it's going to put them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to keep them evenly distributed. Depth first is going to be, hey, load up host 1 with 20 people before you even move on to host 2, host 3. So we're going to pick breadth first. Max session limit is what determines what that the maximum number of logged in users can be. It's active users. So we're just going to say 10 just to keep it simple. Move on to the next step, which is we're not adding Azure virtual machines because the VMs are going to live on-prem. We do need to register a workspace though. So you can see I don't have one right now. So we're going to make one, call it workspace demo. Go to the next step. If you want diagnostic logs configured, you can. And at this point, we just skip ahead because we're not really worried about tags or anything for this demo. And this is creating our host pool for us now. It's also creating the workspace and the workspace DAG. So you're going to see a couple things appear in your research group once this is complete. And the most important part of this step is once it's deployed, is there will be a registration key associated to this workspace. Or I should say that the host pool, not the workspace doesn't have the actual key associated to it. It's right up here. It's literally right at the top. You can't miss it. Click it. It already will be generated. This one expires tomorrow around, I don't know, I guess 24 hours from now. I'm going to just generate a new one because you have the ability to set this for like a month in advance, or I guess 27 days. That's weird. I don't know why they only do 27, but we're going to crank it up a couple weeks. And we're going to copy this key into host pool key. So now I have the Azure Arc stuff here. I have our host pool key, which we're going to need when we install our agent. At this point, we are ready to, the Azure side of things are basically set up. We do need to worry about like user assignment and stuff through Azure AD groups or just individual onesie twosie users. We'll get back to that. Actually, you know, why not? Let's just do it now. I already have some people created. You got to go into the host. Oh, in this case, it's the application group. It's a desktop application group. If I go to assignments, I'm going to add, I have a demo user here called Bob Dole. We're going to add him. We'll add a few other sample people. Trisha Yearwood, huh? So these are all users that live on my on-prem AD, the Active Directory that the machine's going to be joined to, and it's synced with Azure AD Sync. So home lab is that domain. All right, fun part. We're going to make a VM. It's going to be quick. We're going to call this AVD demo 1. And this is going to be, I remember we made these volumes last time, VMO1, VMO2. Use a generation 2 VM. We're only going to give him a, I don't know. We're going to use dynamic memory for this actually. Connect it to my switch. We're not going to be attaching a VM right now. And again, if you're doing this, you probably want to be using System Center. You probably want to be using PowerShell, because doing this onesie twosie through Hyper-V Manager is not fun. We'll give a couple of vCPUs here. We're going to change this to dynamic memory and say 2048. I'll just set it like that. And now what I want to do is open another window up and copy and paste that VHD. Oops. Struggling with my mouse today. So we're going to go into VMO1 folder, which we now see is created for my VM. We're going to copy and paste this VHDX. And we're going to attach it. AVD demo 1, Win 11, multi-session. I'm not going to hit apply yet. I'm going to wait until that copy finishes in the background. There's a reason why I'm not hitting apply yet, and it has to do with permissions, with how Hyper-V attaches VHDXs and assigns NTFS permissions to it. So there we go. And I make sure my boot entry is correctly set. We're going to connect, and we're going to turn it on. Whoa. That is some weird DPI setting right there. I didn't know that happened. It's kind of cool, I think. I don't know if I like it. Kind of unnecessary. All right, so we turn our VM on. We're at the out-of-box experience. This is all boring stuff. Again, if you're using something like System Center, a lot of this would be templated. The VM may even have joined to the domain for you. So we're going to just blow through this real quick. Maybe we'll even do like a time lapse. Like this will just go like 10x speed. That wasn't too bad. Let's see if the actual thing renamed. So what I did here was I just joined the machine to the domain, made sure I renamed it when I was joining it to the domain. And yes, it is joined. So I'm logging in as a domain admin real quick, which probably don't want to do unless you have to really do it. But again, for my home lab, that's what I got set up right now. I want to make sure that remote desktop is actually enabled. You would assume it would be because the image came from Azure. And then we also have to add the user group that we, so those 3 users I added earlier, Bob Dole, Trisha Yearwood, they need to be added as RDP users to be able to get into this at a bare minimum. You can make them local administrators if you want. That may be overkill for you depending on your requirements in your workspace or whatever. I'm going to just add them as local RDP users. So, and you can also obviously do this with like an AD security group. I don't have one, so we're just going to add Bob Dole, I think Harry Potter, Trisha Yearwood, they all are. So we're just adding them directly to the remote desktop users group. Again, you can have a domain security group here to do that for you. Likewise, if that security group is synchronized in Azure AD, the step earlier when you added those users to an assignment, you could just done that too. And now we want to make sure that RDP is actually enabled. Windows 11, I think, buries it in here. Remote desktop. What do we got? What do we got? Remote desktop settings. Yep, it's on, as it should be. Obviously, if you have group policies being pushed out when you join this to the domain that maybe enable the software firewall in Windows, you may want to check that. I personally don't, but don't forget, your firewall can always be a little snafu. Now what we're going to do is, so I can do this through Hyper-V, through like the VM Connect. I can do it through this, or I can RDP into this locally. So what's my IP? 232. Sign out. So I'm unsure if DNS in my environment is working. To resolve this subdomain, I don't have a conditional forward set up. So we're just gonna get right into it using the IP. We're gonna launch PowerShell IC because I don't have VS Code on here. And all that stuff I had from before. We're gonna register this into Azure Arc. So the Azure Arc, by default, the Azure Arc install wants you to log in and approve it. There are ways to run this as a service principal, so you don't need to do that. But for demo's sake, I'm going to walk you through the whole manual process here. And you can see that machine got authenticated. And then after the authentication is done, we can go back to the Azure Portal. We'll see it in our resource group. There it is. You now have a VM with Azure Arc onboarded. The next two steps are basically to just download the AVD agent. Those are links that you can find in the AVD documentation, or you can automate the download through PowerShell. But just to save a few minutes, because I'm in a UI anyway, I want to show you the process of doing it manually. I'm going to download them through Edge. Let's see if we can get that a little bigger. Open that. This process is basically just click through, and it's going to ask you to copy and paste the token in we have saved from before. Install that. Yep. And then we're also wait for that to finish. Good. And then there's the bootloader. Again, another link that you have to kind of go through documentation to find. This one doesn't need any keys or licenses or registration values. It just click and go. Good. Now, so at this point, this VM is done. We're done with it. It's onboarded. And if I go to the Azure portal and I go look at my host pool and I hit refresh, there it is. It's there. It says unavailable because what's going on right now is it's downloading and checking for the latest updates of the agent that was installed. Coincidentally, the downloadable version is not the latest version, so it's got to phone home and get it. It's also establishing a tunnel back to Azure's backplane. So if I hit refresh, there you go, upgrading. At this point, this is kind of done. It's hands off at this point. Microsoft is running its automation in the background. I'm going to log off of this guy because I don't need to be on it anymore. You could do Windows updates, but remember, we did download a recently updated image, so there shouldn't really be Windows updates. So we're going to sign out. And this is going to take, in my experience, it could take 5 to 10 minutes. Depends on the speed, depends on your internet connection. So we're going to, again, we're going to kind of hand wave this away and jump ahead. And there we go, refreshed, up to date, available, agents on the newest version. Awesome. So at this point, I'm going to minimize all my sessions, and I'm going to pull open. I'm going to open up an incognito window just to show this. We're going to go to Azure Portal. I'm going to log in with Bob Dole. Got to approve my multi-factor. Should be approved. No, we're not going to stay signed in. So I'm logged in as Bob Dole. And I'm going to go to the AVD web client. Now this is an HTML5 RDP session, or RDP client basically, just to demonstrate what we're seeing. So you can see there's our workspace that we just made, workspace demo. I have made workspaces before, and that's the other one. So I'm assigned 2. You can be assigned to an infinite amount of workspaces, and this is where they show up. So I can click on this. I can RDP in now. If I click on demo, it'll actually connect me through HTML5 right in the web browser. There you go, I get a session. And now what's happening is this session is actually from the machine I am browsing the web from. It's making a connection up to Azure's remote desktop infrastructure that they manage over 443. So it's all encapsulated over HTTPS. That then has that gateway that I'm connecting to in the cloud has a reverse tunnel from those agents I installed earlier on the actual session host. And that two-way outbound connection basically gets proxied and then handed off so that I'm now connected to the AVD session host, and I'm literally RDP'd into that machine we just made in my web browser. Pretty cool. Definitely great for like mobility or low performance devices that maybe not have the native RD client. So the other types of devices that can connect to this obviously are the native remote desktop client that's available on the Windows Store, or the or just the downloadable Win32 version of it. So I have a copy of it here. You can see I'm already connected. You get some more additional features here. Obviously, with the native client, instead of HTML5, you can expand your, you can span all your monitors, or you can have different DPI settings. So you get a lot more native built-in features, device redirection, things like that. But you can also do it for your phone. So I haven't added the workspace yet, but if I put in Bob Dole at homelab.erniecosta.com. But you can also connect to things like your iPhone, just like that. Ooh, check that out. So we're gonna pause here with the setup, and we're gonna transition over to now me demoing this, because it's cool to like see it in a lab and play with it in the same network. Like I'm in my house, I'm in my office, the hardware's downstairs. The bits aren't traveling that far. We're gonna see some real world applications and like usage of this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rewind back in time a little bit, and we're going to go visit a couple European countries. So obviously we have to start off in the airport lounge, because you can't start any trip without a couple cocktails to get you ready for the flight. This is me with my wife, and unboxing and setting up the Surface laptop and connecting it to my Azure AD tenant. And once that's all done, we need to get our remote desktop client. You can do this through the Windows Store, or you can download the what I like to call the traditional thick client, even though they're both really kind of visually the same thing. But you can download the thick client directly from the MSRDC website. Or if you want to be fancy, you can download this on a mobile phone. I'm using my iPhone here, and I'm connecting, actually, in this example, I'm connecting over the cruise ships I was on, the cruise ship's satellite internet, which had a pretty terrible latency. I think it was getting about 200 milliseconds round trip. Now, by the time the session host fully got me logged in and loaded up, my desktop was pretty responsive. I mean, it was just a matter of the commands, or I should say the window refreshes, making it to me on the other side of the world. So I always like to do a test, even without a GPU. I like to go to YouTube or some kind of streaming service that I can kind of tax the session host CPU, but also kind of put a strain on some video rendering. So I'm going to YouTube. I'm going to pull up an old music video, some throwbacks to I don't know, my high school days. I'm going to try to pull up something that's got a little bit of flavor to it. And you can see, like, look, it's laggy. I mean, 30 frames, you're not going to get 30 frames per second. Like, this isn't your machine lagging out. I'm probably getting 2 frames per second remotely. And I think I even pulled up on the screen share or the screen recording. I think I even pulled up the stats for nerds stuff from YouTube just to show. I mean, you can see the mouse moving. The mouse which is rendering locally on the iPhone, is being recorded at like 60 frames per second. So like, this is a no-brainer. Duh, you're not going to get streaming video. Like, the speed of light is only going to go so fast, and if you have a poor internet connection, don't expect to be playing video games on this. But nonetheless, it is pretty darn cool, especially when you get to see what it really looks like, to see what I'm seeing, and just to prove, like, I really was in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. So like I mentioned at the top of the video, I basically was away for a month and a half, working exclusively remote, um, and leveraging AVD-HCI for 99% of the stuff I was doing. And full disclosure, the videos that you just saw, like on the cruise ship and stuff, that's me accessing. Um, Not just an AVD instance that's sitting in my basement in my house downstairs from where I am right now, but I was also doing a lot of work for my actual company in our production AVD on HCI instance. And I say production, it's still public preview. We are running a lot of production grade workloads on it to test it. It's working as far as our usage, it's working great. We're very happy with it. It has solved a lot of problems. It makes management of things a lot easier. Few lessons learned though. So, like I said at the end, and like you saw, the latency, the frame rate of the video, uh, that may be an issue for you. If you can't tolerate 200, 300 millisecond round trip times, any RDP solution is gonna give you problems. RDP short path is something that can help with that, where the actual RDP session is established over UDP. Instead of you connecting to the Azure backplane to their RD gateways in the cloud, there's a handoff that occurs, and then you are directly sending your packets from your local laptop, workstation, whatever, to the data center that the AVD HCI session hosts are in. That will eliminate a few hops, and if you're local to like the geographical region, that's great. Your latency is going to be significantly improved. But in my scenario, where I'm in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, connected to satellite internet, who knows where that relays to and what routes that ends up going through. Um, Probably not going to make that big of a difference there. Likewise, if you have users maybe in APAC regions, like if you have folks in Australia, let's say, and your data center is in the United States, RDP short path isn't going to make that big of a difference. Like the fiber still has to go around the world to get to it. So, I mean, photons can only move so fast. So if latency is a concern and you're trying to connect to folks that are, on the other side of the world, you may be better served to have your session hosts local to that geographical region. And this isn't rocket science. These are known facts that have been around forever. If you've ever used your own or managed your own RD infrastructure, you know these things. Um, but please don't think that AVD-HCI is some magic physics-defying service that will just solve these things for you. So we're going to call it here. This is a very, very long video. I'm kind of sorry, but I'm kind of not sorry because I wanted to really, really walk everyone through the simple side of this. The next time, we're still going to focus on AVD. We're going to talk about, at scale deployment. So building automation around this, making this repeatable, leveraging service principles for the authentication portion of the onboarding. Maybe talking about the future of AVD-HCI and what Microsoft has planned for management. We're going to talk about other tools that can be used to manage this third-party software that's around. One such piece of software is by a company called Nerdio. If you've been in the AVD and RD world for a while, you'll know that name. We're also going to maybe play around a little bit with System Center, Virtual Machine Manager. So if you use VMM already, how you can leverage VMM service templates and automation and scaling of your session host pools using that, because System Center now has Azure Stack HCI support. So it seems like a really, really good use case for this. So that's it. If you have any questions, comments, obviously feel free to leave them in the comments or email or tweet or whatever. Send smoke signals up. We're always willing to talk about this. Microsoft Ignite is coming up, I think, in a month. I think just by the time this video comes out, it'll be about a month away. So we're hoping there's a lot of good juice in those announcements. And we have more stuff to talk about after that. So stay tuned. Thanks again for stopping by. We appreciate you hanging in there. I think we're at almost an hour. Thank you very much. And we'll be back soon.